All right, Tom Weichel is our prosecuting attorney. He's going to talk to us a little bit about the meeting disruption things that have gone on all over, the 1st Congressional District. So, Tom, you want to come up and tell us what you can?
I only have 10 minutes or so to talk about an extremely complex subject. When you start talking about these political meetings that are occurring, town hall meetings, you run smack into the First Amendment. Everybody is allowed to speak their piece. Our Constitution, both state and federal, talk about our right that no law should abridge our ability to speak freely. We run into peaceful assemblies and the right for us to have a peaceful assembly. Where does that collide? When does the disruptions you're seeing break, quote unquote, the law? Well, Michigan's we have a statute, and I'm going to read it because, the older I get, my memory kind of slips and I don't see it as well and my hearing's gone a little bit. There is a statute which is found at MCL 750-170, which is entitled Disturbance of a Lawful Meeting. We know it is disturbing the peace, and there are a number of prongs to that, meaning we have choices as prosecutors, as law enforcement, to enforce certain situations. But pretty clearly our statute says, disturbance of lawful meetings. Any person who shall make or excite any disturbance or contention in any tavern, store, or grocery, manufacturing establishment, or any other business place, or in any street, lane, alley, highway, public building, grounds, or park, or at any election or other public meeting where citizens are peaceably and lawfully assembled shall be guilty of a misdemeanor. Sounds pretty easy, right? Yeah. Our state has fought a couple of battles, and when I say our state, the people, we fought a couple of battles, and unfortunately the other side has won. And our courts have decided, our Supreme Courts have decided that the use of the term or contention, excite a contention, is vastly overbroad. Meaning, what does that cover? Does that infringe on the public's First Amendment right to free speech? Twice in our history, our jurisprudence history, our Supreme Court has said, yes, that's way too overbroad. Many of you are familiar with probably the swearing canoeist case. Those People versus Boomer on in Aranet County on the Rifle River, close to Judge Riffle's area. That was a case where we had a statute that says you couldn't swear or use nasty language in front of women or children. Guess what? Why is that? Equal protection. Why doesn't that apply to men? You can't have a law that focuses just on women or children. It's discrimination. So that law went down. There were a couple of laws on the books back in the 30s that said it was a misdemeanor to use the Lord's name in vain in public, and to use Jesus Christ's name in vain in public. Guess what? That's gone too. That abridges our First Amendment rights to free speech. What has occurred when you do a review of this type of law is we have a doctrine, and it's a constitutional doctrine, that we have a right to know what the law is. And when you start talking about laws that are overbroad, it means we don't really understand how to control our conduct to comply with the law. It could mean way too many things. And what's happening is you see our First Amendment rights walking right along with this overbroad, you're unconstitutional language. So our legislature does have a right to enact laws that controls problems like this. Problems that many of you talked to me about, what you saw at the general town hall meetings in all of these interruptions. And I was asked, why did the police just stand around? Why didn't they do anything? Why can't they protect our right to have this peaceful meeting? Based upon all of these court rulings, the police aren't sure what conduct falls into legal speech versus illegal conduct. I can tell you, in this county, if I were present and saw the disruption of a meeting, and you have to be careful because our key language, what a prosecutor has to look at, what the police have to look at, is exciting any disturbance. So if you're at a peaceful meeting and there's a disturbance created, how did the person excite the disturbance? And does that abridge his right, his First Amendment right? Which kind of trumps a lot of things. All speech is not protected. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about fighting words. Fighting words are not protected. But our legislature is allowed to enact laws that protect things like lawful meetings. Now, what did our legislature do once the statute, part of it was determined to be unconstitutional? Nothing. Not a thing. The statute is still on the books, how I read it. Gary's shaking his head no. You think they did something?
It was repealed in 2015 in December. Pete voted to repeal it along with other legislatures. Because it was repealed with singing the Star Spangled Banner out of tune, and they took all those blue laws and repealed them.
Yeah, but disturbing a public meeting is still the law, okay?
Well, I'm sorry, I
It's
thought you were
just-
talking about the vulgar language.
No, disturbing the peace is still a law, and that's the statute I have to rely on, Sergeant Stevenson would have to rely on, in trying to enforce the disruptions of these meetings. And part of that statute has been determined to be unconstitutional. And the legislature hasn't done anything to fix it, okay? And it's the overbroadness of the language inciting a contention, because we have a hard time figuring out if exciting a contention means that I'm expressing my political difference. And if I'm expressing a political difference, we have a First Amendment issue. It flies straight in the face of the First Amendment. They can express it. The question becomes, how long do you let this continue at your town hall meetings? How far do you let it go? The stuff I watched that Gary sent me, I just kind of rubbed my head. And if you have multiple people screaming it, who do you focus on?
Yeah.
The ones in the
You
funny
focus
hats.
on all of them? We have limited police staff. I believe there were 5 or 6 police officers there.
Yeah.
Maybe more,
At
maybe a
least,
few
There
more.
were a combination of state troopers,
Do you take the risk of starting to pull people out and creating a bigger problem? I'm not sure why the police didn't do anything, but I can tell you in this county, if I were present at a meeting and watched it continue to the point where it was disturbing the meeting, yes, there's a problem. Yes, we would try and do something. Would we be successful? I don't know. The other piece of the statute, excite any disturbance, has never been challenged yet. And I have a feeling, looking at how all these opinions have fallen, there's a potential that we may say that language is overbroad. You need to be more specific, legislature, in setting out some kind of regulation as to what's protected when people are meeting. There was one opinion that I did find, and it was actually based upon a city ordinance. In the appellate system, if I can find it here. Set out an opinion that talked about what was section 51-125 of a city ordinance. And that language read, "It shall be unlawful for a person to disturb the public peace and quiet by shouting, whistling, loud, boisterous, or vulgar conduct, the playing of musical instruments, phonographs, radios, televisions, tape players," that kind of gives it away as to how old that was, doesn't it?
Phonographs, I think, kind of, sort of. Victrolas?
Phonographs too.
Yeah.
Or plays, excuse me, where was it? Or any other means of amplification at any time or place so as to unreasonably annoy or disturb the quiet comfort and repose of persons in the vicinity. Our Court of Appeals in Plymouth versus Hancock issued an opinion on that and said, guess what? That language is not overbroad. It is very specific as the conduct it's attempted to control, and it's constitutional. That occurred back in 1999. The last case on the statute I talked about, the disturbing the peace statute, was about 3 years ago. The one previous to that was in the 80s. So why is our legislature sitting on their hands in reference to this issue? Not taking a look at a township ordinance out there and trying to apply state law to the concepts contained in a township ordinance. I can probably tell you one of the biggest reasons, lobbyists. And I say that because that means if this type of language is adopted, because the state doesn't have a sound ordinance or a noise ordinance or anything like that. You have to rely on your townships or your cities or your villages for those types of things. That would create a statewide noise ordinance. So now how do you determine, yeah, I would agree. I can't tell you how many times Sergeant Stevenson has gone out on noise complaints, let alone all the other deputies or the state police complaining about neighbors playing loud music at 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, but you could get the Gaylord, the city council of Gaylord to pass an ordinance just like that.
City could pass an ordinance just like
And boom, we could, work around the deadlock of the legislature.
But, again, the enforcement of it is another thing. Because right away they're gonna be screaming, it's my constitutional right to express myself.
Okay, why do they get rights and we don't?
It's constitutes First Amendment of the Constitution.
No,
Yeah,
no,
but
when
they-
I'm peaceably meeting, I have
Huh?
constitutional rights as well. And I have First Amendment rights and they're infringing upon my
That's right.
ability to communicate with like-minded fellows. So,
But when you read the Constitution, what the Constitution specifically says is it says we can make no laws that abridge your First Amendment right to speech. And actually, when you look at Michigan's Constitution, that's even a little bit more clearer. Every person may freely speak, write, express, and publish his views on all subjects, being responsible for the abuse of such right.
Yeah,
And
but
that's what you're talking about. And no law shall be enacted to restrain or abridge the liberty of speech or the press. So the First Amendment right kind of sits up and I hate to say that there's weights to our amendments, but that clearly says we can't enact a law that abridges that right to speech. That's why the fighting words, when most of you have heard that, fighting words is not constitutionally protected. It just isn't. So when you're in a meeting and no one's expressing fighting words, today you can get online and look at Fox News what happened in California. Anyone see what happened in California at the Democratic Party meeting? They invited a number of, I think it was hearing impaired or something individuals up to the stage to express their thanks and gratitude and so on and so forth. One of them gets up there and decides to give the bird and start mouthing F Donald Trump, F Donald Trump. Yeah. Well, the whole crowd started to join in.
That's California.
It's California, but you know, the meeting in Gaylord wasn't far from that.
No.
They didn't use that language, but they sure attempted to disrupt a peaceful meeting.
Those are hired, those are, a lot of them are hired, I'm gonna tell you right now.
What, in Gaylord?
Yeah, and I bet you a few of them are. And I'm gonna tell you what really is the problem with what we're seeing, is they're wanting you and me to not go to those meetings.
Mm-hmm.
They wanna shut us down. And if we allow it to happen, then they get what they want. So, no, their right does not trump our right.
Nope, not at all.
Not at all. And if they're disrupting a meeting, they need to be asked to leave.
I would agree wholeheartedly, and I don't think they were.
No, well,
I
well,
don't
that would
think
be
they
the
were.
person running the meeting should have asked them.
And the other part of this thing is these judges that are, these federal judges especially, that have been selected by liberal presidents and appointed by, approved by a liberal Senate, they're doing things way outside of the principles of this country, you know, because this country is based on natural law, and there's a book about natural law that has right there a page, I wish I brought it with me, because I got the page and paragraph that says, you know, a law is, you interpret it clearly for what it says. You don't try to invent things out of that phrase you said of that law. It's like, no, it's just clear. You don't make a disruption, period. And too bad, so sad, you're out, you know, at least you're out of the place. You might not charge you with a misdemeanor, but you're out of the building.
And you know, it's interesting that the overbroad constitutional violation seems to walk hand in hand with the statutes that attempt to abridge First Amendment rights, attempt to control it, to keep it basically a responsible provision, constitutional provision, and it walks hand in hand, and it's slowly eroded. And I agree wholeheartedly. They're trying to keep us from meeting.
That's right.
They're trying to keep us from gathering to express our dissatisfaction with what we see going on in our country. Yeah, Carrie.
Do we have any recourse if we were to, on an individual basis, say like, I'm sitting next to loudmouth, pink hat wearing so-and-so, can I ask the police to please arrest this person for disturbing the peace? What if it's a one-on-one individual, I would like to press charges against so-and-so?
Well, I can probably tell you what Sergeant Stevenson would tell you. What did they do?
You're affecting my
Did
hearing.
they hit you? No. They were yelling things you didn't like? Yeah.
They were
They were yelling so loudly that nobody could
hear.
hear the answers to the questions that they themselves had asked.
They are disrupting my
It was
peace.
horrible.
I can't,
Do I have a right to be able to hear the speaker?
I personally have a belief that the person who is in charge and putting it on should have asked for some state police assistance or police assistance to escort some individuals out, or ask them to be quiet, or they're gonna be escorted out. You want to express your opinion? I'll give you the opportunity at the end to express your opinion.
Just
But
to
don't
see-
disrupt a peaceful meeting.
That was the other thing I
They
read,
tried that.
doing some research on this, like in Oregon, believe it or not, they have actually a law that says, you will have your agenda. And in that agenda, there will be a time for people to speak. And if they
For public comment.
they violate that agenda, then they're out,
Those generally, that type of agenda is designed for public governmental meetings, where a governmental entity is meeting and making decisions on certain things, county business, township business, city business, state business, whatever it happens to be. The township meetings aren't really designed as such, where governmental decisions are being made, they're listening to opinion. So there is a specific difference in reference to probably what you're looking at. However, I still think it's the person who's putting on the meeting. But part of the problem is, what are they looking for? Do they want us to react in a certain way? Do they get more publicity by having them escorted
Yeah,
out?
they play with
And
the
start
media.
screaming,
Yes.
and start screaming, and you know how well the media listens, right?
Yeah.
So now we have violated their constitutional rights by not allowing them to express their opinion. So you have to, you're walking very carefully. I mean, you have to walk very carefully in reference to your reactions to the disruption of meetings. Because you don't want to give them what they
You don't want to
want.
step on a snowflake's toes, I understand that.
And we already understand that the media is already.
Don't give them what they want.
So we should stop tiptoeing around those.
Just a suggestion, since they were there specifically to disrupt Jack Bergman's commentary, would it be possible for perhaps a ranking law officer to take the microphone and say, we will have order here. If you continue to disrupt the meeting, you will be asked to leave. If you do not leave voluntarily and continue to disrupt, you will be escorted out. That way, they've been warned.
Sorry, I missed that.
There's a lot of options that could have occurred. I mean, you could have had a police officer walk up next to him and say, hey, you need to quiet down or you're gonna be asked to leave. Please don't excite a disturbance here at this peaceful assembly. But understand, police officers are not trained, really, they're not, and I have no attempt to,
Crowd control.
in any way, shape, or form, harm what our police officers do every day. But for a police officer to try to decide whether or not it's a First Amendment abridgment, if I ask this person to leave, or even the courts struggle with it. So to ask a police officer to do something like that potentially can get kind of sticky. However, I would suspect that General Bergman could have taken care of it if he were speaking and he were the one talking.
He did make several attempts, but they shouted over him and you couldn't hear him.
There was no stopping.
Well, then you stop and ask the police to intervene.
No. There was too many.
You have the situation there where it's a shutdown. It's a complete shutdown of the meeting, and everybody will disperse. If there's a problem for somebody in safety and it's getting out of hand, then that's probably what's gonna happen with your police department or anybody that's there to enforce it. Because once it gets out of hand, which it has, and now you're talking about cutting somebody's rights down, who's to make that decision? You don't have a judge there. So the best thing and the quickest thing that's gonna happen is it's a shutdown, the meeting's over with, everybody goes home.
So they get their way.
And that's right, and that's something though that will be in your face every time you get into at least a 50, 20 or whatever percent of the people that comes in. And if they want to do that.
How many
that's what
times did we see it during the presidential campaign? I don't know, 5, 6, 10, 15 times?
How about these crazy laws they've been passing to the people? Can't we use those right back at them? They're hurting my feelings kind of stupidity.
I'm
they've got
offended.
going, where they're in my personal space and all that craziness.
I'm
And
not
then what was that you said? They're
There's
creating
threats,
not a hazardous environment, but
No,
Not a violent environment, but
Top
a hostile environment.
And they're creating a hostile environment, and they're intimidating and threatening.
They're also infringing on everybody else's right to free speech.
Right, right. We
Yes,
don't
I
care
think
about
it
that.
needs to be announced.
Right.
My question is, I wasn't at this meeting, were they, any of them wearing masks?
No,
No.
no, just their silly
Had
hats.
them funny hat, those
Oh,
little
no, yes.
The little
yeah.
red,
Freeze the
website
whatever rabbit hat.
Pussy hats.
And, you know,
Great part.
there are lots of things that can be done, but do you do them? Do you let them get their own way? Do you haul people out? Do you make a spectacle of it? Do you try and identify the people and their names and send the report to the prosecutors? Is that what law enforcement should be doing? Should arrests occur after the fact? I mean, we use video all the time now to identify individuals in rioting situations. Should that have occurred? I don't have the answers to those questions.
And do we have to press
but
charges?
Perhaps.
I mean, in order to make this stick, who in the crowd, or who's gonna have to press those charges, and who's gonna have to stick with it all the way through, too, you know?
There was a lot of cameras running.
Yeah.
And there was probably 300 people there, and I'm gonna say, Gary, what do you think? Probably 200 of them were protesters?
Agitators?
No, there
I
wasn't that.
wouldn't say that many.
You don't think?
But
No, but
Oh, I don't know.
well, even some of the Democrats that were there were embarrassed by the
Yeah.
people that went to agitate.
yeah.
That was
A lot of
something that
people.
transpired too.
And what was really surprising to me that some of the people, one of the individuals works for Tristan Cole, and she saw her neighbors, people who teach her children, those people who go to her church participating in that. Well, we found out when we did research what was going on with the Pink Hat people. So there was a group, and there's a group here in Greenbush called Indivisible. Their whole point and purpose is to go and disrupt.
That's
They
right.
say it on their website, and we found out when they're meeting, and then what they'll do is they'll alert, you're gonna have a town hall. Now, what we may wanna do as a group, if we really want a real town hall, like when we have one here, you notice no one's coming here to disrupt. We have to maybe change our approach on how we're going to meet with our congressman, how we meet with Sue. Because the whole point is for those who really want to hear something, we realize that that's not their intent. And they made their intent very clear. The reason why Gary and I were there, because we received an email from those who were finding out, well, this has not happened before. And I really would not have thought in northern Michigan that would have happened. I've been to many town halls, we've met many times, we talked to a variety of people running for different positions, in government. Never had that experience, but this is a deliberate group. So what we're looking at is really not, it's what you're saying, but we're really looking at how we're going to counteract this enemy. And they really put it on their website, and we researched it to see. And that's what you're dealing with. So when it comes to wanting to meet with our representatives and our Congress and government, we may have to rethink about that. The reason why, we were told to make a big presence in front, try to shelter the congressman from all that stuff. The gentleman that was reading the questions, which I was handing it to, and I was even being accused of reading the questions. I didn't. When you have that kind of people who are whole intent, they're not going to listen to reasoning, we have to look as a group, how do we do this so nobody gets harmed? Because no law is going to stop them. So we have to regroup on how we're going to interact so we really get what we want in there.
It was the chairman of the Democratic Party in California
Sure.
who started the chant. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
So that's.
Well, and the other thing is, use those cameras and get this stuff posted online and then public say, look at these people, how
Uncivilized they are.
Civilized.
Viral, Breitbart News says, separation of church and state, leftist disrupts Michigan town hall. That was in the next day, then other news sites start taking it. And that got a lot of attention because the issue was, and when they played it, I was shocked. I was shocked to see, when you saw it in video, we were there. So I guess that's what you do, but then you look at how you protect your Congress people, your government people, because we know the purpose we want to meet with them. So you may have to rethink, or someone says, hey, make a presence there to protect them and to push back. Because they were just very, very loud, but there was more of us than they were then, but they were so loud. And their whole point was to disrupt. And they said that on their website. And there's groups, like I said,
Yeah.
right here, and even in Greenbush. You can find out where they're gonna be. So if you're gonna have a town hall meeting, go on the Indivisible website, see where their meeting is and their plan is. You betcha that group is gonna be there, because they were doing it all through the 1st Congressional District.
And I would bet that there were Secret Service there also to protect Jack. You
Yeah.
probably didn't see him.
You see a lot of people, because he got taken right out to the back. He did not have to go into the crowd at all.
So that
Hopefully
leads,
it's done more damage than it did good for them.
that leads me to ask, is there anything that we can do preemptively? Because I've been to their website, and there are some kind of hateful things on there,
Probably.
bringing up hate speech.
Yeah, there's a law against that.
There's a law against that, I was gonna say.
Yeah, exactly what I was just saying, there's
You know, until it happens, until there's a meeting that they're out there planning on attending, really the thing is make sure there's enough law enforcement there to be able to stop the problem from happening. But then if you're doing that, are you letting them get their way again? It's such a double-edged sword right now.
If you had one person with the money and the backing to take that group to court, things might change.
Well, they're backed by Soros,
Yeah,
Yeah, that don't matter.
a lot of money.
he's
Okay.
probably got way deeper pockets than any of us
I've
have.
got the final question, we've got 3 minutes. What would you do legally if you were at a meeting and this disruption started? What would you do to make it stop?
I don't know if there's anything I could do to make it stop. It is police that have to step in and make it stop. Would I aid the police in saying, hey, I believe this is a violation of Michigan law? Yes, I would.
Okay,
I'd advise them that I believe it's a violation of Michigan's law and disturbing the peace, and they're exciting a disturbance, and Michigan law protects against that. So please do something. But it depends on the circumstances. You just can't give paint a broad brush and say in
Right.
every situation that's what we're gonna do, because you really have to put some thought into what do they wanna get out of this? Is this the publicity they're looking for?
Yeah.
Was there enough action on their part to create the violation of Michigan law, exciting a disturbance?
Absolutely.
Was it continuous? Well, you're going back to
Yeah.
the town
Let's-
hall meeting, but she's suggesting if I'm at a meeting like
Yeah.
that, I'm heading for the door. Because I don't wanna do or say anything that's gonna create a problem for the police officers or turn the place into a full-blown riot. So you have to walk pretty fine with what you're doing.
Yeah, the issue though is every time we step back, they push. They'll egg it up one more notch every time we step back until they have completely silenced us. And that's what they're a bunch of communists, first of all. Pick up someone's book, it's right there, shut down any kind of meaningful discourse.
I can't draw that conclusion that they're a bunch of communists. People have a right to express their opinion. I don't like how they're doing it, but just because I don't like it doesn't mean it's a violation of Michigan law.
It's one thing to be a commie, it's another thing to start engaging in communist activity, okay?
I don't like the
Okay.
fact that people can